Hey there, Jason. Thanks for joining us here on the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast. We are super excited to be chatting with you. And actually, we're doing it a little differently tonight because our first method wasn't working out so well. So we're actually on a video Zoom call, and it's actually a little different. I don't think John and I have ever done a video call for
I don't think so.
an episode. Actually,
no, we've done some. Yeah, we've done some where we planned it that way.
Yep. Absolutely. How are you doing tonight there, Jason? How's things in your world?
I am doing well. We just got back from winter break, and so this week has been back to remote learning.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And the joys.
Yeah.
For a lot of us too, both Kyle and I, our districts have just gone into remote learning. We've pretty much been in the classroom since September, but we've just moved into remote learning around the break time. So awesome stuff there, Jason. I know there's a lot of struggles there, but do us a favor and tell us and the folks here listening a little bit about yourself, like where you're coming to us from. You know, the usual, how long you've been teaching, like what's your journey look like? What's your teaching role right now? Give us a snapshot.
Yeah, so I live in Ottawa, Illinois.
Oh, I was going to say.
I know you threw a curveball.
That accent doesn't sound Canadian.
Yeah. That was I planned. I had to say that one. You know.
Yeah.
And I've lived here my whole life. I taught. This is my 13th year teaching. I teach 5th grade. Always been teaching elementary. I taught for 11 years in a district about 40 minutes away from where I live. And then I finally just last year got in here in my hometown. So instead of 40-minute commute, 4-minute commute. So it's been nice.
Good for your life, but not good for your podcast listening, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I 13th year. And I taught 4th grade for 9 years and then transferred to 5th grade in the previous district. This is my 2nd year teaching 5th grade here. So 5th grade for 4 years. So I teach everything except social studies. My partner teacher across the hall teaches social studies to my kids. I teach science to hers. So, you know, I just like on some of your other podcasts I've heard, you know, those elementary teachers, we're spread pretty thin with, you know, everything.
Totally. And I've always got such admiration for elementary teachers. Just, you know, I teach one subject all day. So imagine having to intermix and teach all subjects always just scares me. And especially, you know, the same group of kids all day, that actually scared me when we moved to this pandemic teaching, that we were going to have the same group of kids all day. And I was like, wait a minute, I've been used to teaching I've been used to teaching kids for an hour a day. And then I get another group of kids and then another group of kids all day. Oh my gosh. I was pretty scared, but lots of admiration for elementary teachers.
Yeah. Like I said, we got back after break this week remote. We were in trimesters. So first trimester was kind of a hybrid schedule. So our kids were here first half of the day for about 3 hours, and they go home for remote learning. And then we have the kids who have the full option of staying home. You know, a few kids that are full remote. And then second trimester, we all went home. Because of the rise in numbers here in our area. And then we are actually planning on coming back to our old schedule from the first trimester next week. So it'll be nice to see the kids back here in the classroom for the first half of the school day.
Yeah, true. Jason, I'm wondering if you could give us a kind of a background on we always like to dig in a little deep on what teaching looked like early for you. Like we know that you are, you know, you've taken a lot of learning over the last little bit. You dove in last summer to the Make Math Moments That Matter online workshop. You became an Academy member. You've been doing obviously a lot of learning, but so I'm curious to hear about what Jason looked like before all that learning. Like, what did teaching look like for you before that? And then we'll get into your math moment, that kind of stuff that we typically get into.
Yeah. So, I, going back before teaching, I, did not have a lot of great, math, learning when I was when I was growing up through school. So as a teacher, in the past 13 years, when I started back in 2008, we used Saxon Math, and I used that. It was my first year, had no rhyme or reason to what I was doing, and quickly after a few years realized, that wasn't really math, and even coming from someone who didn't really have a great math experience as a kid, and growing up, even high school and college, as a teacher, I think I gained that new perspective of like, this is, watching the other kids go through what I went through and thinking, this is not what this should be like in class, with time tests and, things like that. Every day was time tests with that program and things like that, and seeing kids just shut down, and kids with anxiety and things like that. Then we transitioned a few years into my teaching with another program, Go Math, and with the Common Core shift, and that was no training, nothing like that, and so that went okay for a little bit, and then that got same thing. It was like, I don't know if this is I started to,
is this what it's supposed to be?
Exactly. And I really started to change things around for myself close to my last year teaching fourth grade, and kind of decided myself I needed to change things up. And I'll be honest, it wasn't the greatest change up. It was more like, I'm going to take what I'm doing and try to just make it more fun.
Yeah. Right.
And
hey, we were there.
That's how we started.
Playing, games like, hey, you get to shoot a basket if you get this right, or, or if you can show your work, or trying to get kids to work together more, and not just sit at their desks isolated. And then actually all really changed when I read Joe Bowler's book, the Mathematical Mindset. And that really shifted my thinking, and was like reading that and thinking, okay, this is how I wish I learned math, and this is how what math really is, not just teaching math and learning, like, this is what math is. And so that really changed kind of my mindset, and that's what kind of really started to where I'm at today. So
I love it. I love it. And we want to dive even deeper in there. You had mentioned that your math experience wasn't, it sounded like it wasn't something to call home about. So I'm wondering, like, do you have a math moment that sort of pops into your mind? And maybe it's a moment that was, one of those positive moments that you hung on to, or maybe it's one of those moments that sort of summarizes that experience that you said was maybe less than inspirational in terms of what mathematics really is and how we go about learning it. What's your math moment there, Jason?
Yeah, I can give you two quick ones. One, like I said, from growing up, I think, like I said, I didn't really have it. I would say this to you guys. Because I can't think of a lot of great moments from when I was a kid, I think that sums it up right there. It was strictly, here's how you do the work, practice it. I got by, I think. I was never, just like a lot of people that might come on your show and say, I was never thought of myself as math person. I never really cared about it. There wasn't really ever a teacher I had, unfortunately, that got me excited about math. There were a couple projects I remember from second grade. I remember we, this could be the one thing in second grade, we were learning about money and change. And so the teachers, gave us the play money in that, and they set up like a store with slushies. I remember the slushies. And so we got to practice, saving money, buying things and change, real world, it was a good, so that's one thing I remember from my childhood as a math moment.
Right.
And it was an active moment too.
Yes.
Like, this is the part too. Like, when we think of those positive activities or those positive experiences that are about the actual learning of math, they tend to be more of an active sort of, task or
It's
lesson.
broken the script.
Yet we traditionally rarely do those things. Yet you're proving it to us that it actually sticks a whole lot better when we're actually, engaged in the actual learning and you're intrigued by it. So that's cool that you can remember that all the way back from primary.
Yeah. And I think too, the teachers I had, I don't blame them for math. It just, that's how it was. And unfortunately how it is still today in many cases. But then I think going into my teaching, I think one of the moments, besides the Joe Bowler book that I mentioned, I think one of the moments I had that really sparked me and kind of kept me going, because there's always those doubts that creep in when you're trying something new, whether it's math or something else. And I'm not afraid to try something new, but it's a daunting task when you've done math one way your whole life, and then you try to shift, and I'm not a math major, I'm an elementary teacher, so that's what I majored in. So trying to shift, has been a huge issue. But I tried some of Joe Bowler's tasks from one of the books that she came out with when I started teaching fifth grade, and it was the box of boxes task that she has to go along with volume. And I thought, well, I'm going to try this. It was towards the end of the year, and the kids were disengaged, and so I tried that, got the cubes out and gave them the task, and just to see them like playing with the cubes and putting together the figures and trying to figure out how to organize them to fit in the box to be shipped was the task, and just to see the thinking, and then to transfer that to learning about volume, and then a couple other her tasks. I think that really kind of was a moment for me that was like, okay, this might be something. This might work. But then I think just the challenge that stem from there still are thorns in my side.
Right.
But I think that was a big one as a teacher too. So.
Yeah, it's I can see the stemming from your math moment. Like when you say your math moment was, I didn't have any moments. And then we usually try to ask, teachers like you to reflect on, like, what do you think that, like, how did that influence your teaching? But we can clearly see that, like, you want to create these moments for your students. Like you sought that out, looking for Joe Bowler's book, found it, looking to create these moments for your students by changing the script of what math class should look like or was looking like. And I can see that now, like you've done some learning on that, you're making that happen for your kids. And I know that we asked like what it looked like before, but I'm wondering like what, if we keep going on this journey that you're on, we love, hearing about teachers' journeys. And once you kind of captured that book, you tried these tasks, what did it look like next? Like what other, say, big learnings did you have along the way here? And then what was the result of that in your classroom? And then we'll kind of dive into some challenges that some of these things bring up.
Yeah. So I think what happened, from that year, that first year of fifth grade, it was what you just said. It was trying things. It wasn't, there was no rhyme or reason for some of the things. It was just like, I've got to try some of these tasks and see what this is like. Cause I had seen some of her videos. I participated in a couple of her courses, her like webinars one summer, and to see how I could implement them. And so I was really just trying them that year. And then the next year I actually started my year more in a cognizant way of, this is how I'm going to start the year with, about making mistakes is okay. And I want you to make mistakes, things like that, that I really wanted my kids to know at the beginning, like, this is going to be different. This year is going to not be like the past. We're not going to just give answers and take time tests and things like that. And, that was, again, it was the first time trying that. So it was a rocky start. We were piloting another curriculum that year, the Engage New York. So it was kind of these are the things I've kind of over the years, like I wanted to try those things I wanted to try that I really believed in. And then, we're going to pilot this. So I had to balance the the efficacy of doing, that program to see if it was actually working. So we could relay that to the administrators. But then also still trying to weave in what I wanted, what I really wanted to do. So I tried to weave some things in to some success and some failure. And at some point, and this has kind of been the balance here is, I really got more into the Engage New York and followed that a lot. Again, tried to supplement with some things. And then, the next year kind of same thing. And so now here I am in my new district starting last year. And, of course, starting in a new district is not easy. So I'm learning, it wasn't my first year teaching, but it's your first year in a new school with new teachers, with new curriculum. Didn't really have a set curriculum when I was here. So it was actually kind of nice not to have just like, here's this book that you have to use. Mm-hmm. And so I really was able to kind of pull some things. Of course, then COVID hit and there went, all of that. So, and now we got a book, updated version of the book they had for previous years. And, it's not the greatest math in my opinion. So, and again, the way this year started, so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I guess it's been rocky the past 4 years because of different fluctuations in,
Right.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing, and listening to this journey is like, you had kind of like, well, with us, we always talk about our 3-part framework and this idea that you got sparked, and mathematical mindsets, we've talked about it a number of times on the podcast. Definitely one of those reads that, is if you've come from a traditional, and our definition of traditional math class is the way we learned it, the way we taught it for a very long time, which is very procedural, very mimicky, right? Where students are kind of mimicking steps and we're looking to see if kids can get answers, can you get answers and get me this next answer, get me this next answer. If you're going from that book really helps to open your eyes to this idea that there's something more, there's something bigger here that maybe I just haven't been exposed to. And I remember having that reflection or that experience myself, that epiphany when I read that book. And, so you've gotten on this path. I'm sensing though, that along that journey you had mentioned, you're trying these different tasks. So oftentimes we do that, right? Usually we're looking for engagement first, right? Your kids aren't engaged. So you had mentioned, you're like, hey, I was trying to keep them engaged till the end of the school year, tried this task to kind of get them more active, get them to engage in it. But it sounds like, you ran into a few little hiccups along the way. And I'm going to argue that, it is a forever journey. Once it's one thing to feel like you've perfected your resources when you're teaching steps and procedures and when the expectation is kids are going to just kind of mimic what you're doing. That is like you feel like you've gotten there. But when you start to go down this other path, this path of like, engaging students and active and constructing their own learning and really trying to help them merge the mathematics, helping them see that through the tasks, through the problems that we're giving them. It's a lot more difficult, I would argue. It is something, it's that art and that science combined. So I'm wondering, I know that you along the way kind of joined in and did some work in our workshop. Where do you see yourself, I guess, before entering the workshop? What inspired you to get into the workshop? And then like, where do you feel you are now? Like what's changed since then? And then I guess we'll kind of lead into what are you currently working on? Because again, at the end of the workshop, we always say there's so much more work to be done, but hopefully you've got some steps, some plans to help you along that journey. And you can start, hacking away at it a little more efficiently and a little more effectively.
Yeah. So getting into the workshop, I listened to your podcast, kind of, weekly, not on my commute, of course, but as I do some my exercising and things like that, some downtime. So that kind of got me hooked, and appreciate all of your efforts and things like that with really getting your message out there and the community that you've built. And so I just heard about your workshop from your podcast and that, and wanted to join because like I said with some of the other things, I wanted to find. I've been in pursuit. The Joe Boulder book was great, and the other books that I had bought with the tasks are great, but they are tasks. Like my biggest challenge has always been, how do you take the task? How do you take those those math problem solving types of tasks and transition them into units and learning? And so when I took your course and joined your academy, I can say that it was like, okay, this is kind of what I've been looking for. something tangible that doesn't just present a task, but also has a follow-up to it. Where we're going with this, that conceptual to procedural, I think, was the thing that's always in this rocky kind of journey I've been on, has been one of the biggest things, is going from the task to the process of the procedures and things like that, and connecting them as well. And I can say that even with, I took the workshop with the intent of coming into this year thinking I'm gonna really try to implement all these things, and then of course in the back of my mind, not knowing how we were going to start the school year until a few weeks before the school year, and then finding out we were going to be in this hybrid model to start, but who knows how long it was going to last, and we could be out any day. And so I tried, I sporadically, the kids are here. I have to give you the scenario. The kids are, when they're here, like they'll start to be back next week. I have math with them. It's a very condensed schedule. So every day we get through every subject, but it's about 20 some minutes. And math, we actually have double that. So it's nice. We have about 40-ish minutes. They can't work together.
Still not a lot, though. Still not a lot. Yeah, for sure.
No. So they can't work together. They're in rows. They're separated. So it poses a lot of challenges for trying to use some of those methods and strategies with the curiosity path and that. But I have tinkered with it because I've had to do it. So I can tell you, I used I tried to take a textbook problem. Like I said, the textbook's not great in my opinion. But it's a resource. That's kind of how I look at it. It's a resource.
For sure.
So I took this problem we were learning about. Oh gosh, I can't remember exactly what the actual math was, but I took. It was about robots. We were doing something with it. The problem was about robots, and it was some decimals in there, and we were. Multiplication. Sorry, I take it back. It was multiplication. It's been a while. It was way before break, and it was about some robots, and it had a picture of these robots, small robots, big robots, and they were supposed to. The problem was just one of those old textbook, straightforward problems, like so and so is making large robots and small robots. How many robots are there all together if he can make this many in 1 week, or in one day, how many can you make in 1 week? And I was thinking, okay, well, this is, it's kind of old school type of problem. So I tried to tinker with that one, and I took the picture of the robots and clipped it out of the online, textbook and put it in a Google slide and just said, what do you notice and what do you wonder? And that was like, they had done a couple things like that before, so they knew what I was talking about with notice and wonder. And they wrote a whole bunch of things down, just like in your workshop, some silly things.
Always got to have some silly.
Yeah, some silly things. And somebody said, why are they making robots? And
great like question. That. I have no idea.
Yeah. And some mathematical ones. And somebody even came up with a question that I was getting, close to the question I was going to be getting to. And then we went from there, and I posed the question, and again, they couldn't really work in groups. Tried to have them turn around and talk, but don't get too close. And at least talk to a partner and show your thinking. And what was really cool about that was, even though I wanted them, it was something with multiplication that we were doing. There was this one girl in my class who really was, from what I could tell from the minimal time I've had to work with them, being only here for such a short time, kind of, struggled with math sometimes, and like everybody does, but seemed to have a difficult time getting started on knowing where to start with things. And it was really neat when I was walking around the room. I looked over her shoulder, and she was making a list, and, of like, he can make this many in 1 day, in 2 days he can make this much, in 3 days. So it wasn't totally what the purpose of that problem was in that particular textbook lesson. But I even told her, I said, like, oh, that's really cool. I said, can I take a picture of that? And I kept the picture because I wanted to remember, like, this was a different way that she was solving it. And I made sure she had an opportunity to walk me through, her method on at the board, while so many of them were just, doing, this times this.
Yeah, standard algorithm.
Yeah. She was going through, her thinking with that. And it was really cool to see just those different methods. And I've really been trying, since the Joe Bowler experience and all that. This goes back to your previous question, so I apologize. But I've been, one thing that's really shifted in my mindset is trying to really purposefully acknowledge different methods and different strategies, and not, saying, oh, that's awesome, that's a great way to do it, but say, okay, great, that's one way to do it, and somebody else have another way, and really acknowledging that there's different ways of doing math and things like that. So that's been one big thing that I've consistently done over the last few years, even with challenges along the way. But
Yeah. No, it sounds like you've taken some of the biggest ideas we wanted to bring out in the workshop into your classroom, which is amazing to hear, because when you said you started off with thinking like all of these books and research, and there's a lot of resources out there that, say to do these things, but there's not a lot of exactly how does it look in my classroom? How does it look like from start to end? Like, how does it look before we start, in the middle, while we're running the lesson, at the end? Like, there's not a lot out there. Like, when you see some of these tasks online, you're like, okay, that's the task, but what do I do in the middle or at the beginning? And that's in that reason. And then also, like, how does it fit in the bigger picture, right? Like, how does it work with vertical non-permanent services? And how does it work with grouping? Like, there was a lot of things floating around, and that was really why we built the workshop in the course. It was to pull these things together, and we put a framework together because of it. And it's great to hear that you've pulled those big ideas from the course and are implementing it in your classroom. And it sounds like with some good success, some great success. So that's awesome. I'm wondering, and the purpose of this call, right? The purpose of this call is to kind of dig a little deeper on how to help you next. You've gone through this learning. You've got a handle on how the big things fit together on the curiosity path and the framework. But we're wondering, like, what's a pebble in your shoe lately? What can we dig into here now, and kind of push you along the way a little bit more?
Yeah, where to begin? I think, in particular, I mean, obviously now with remote learning, who knows what it's going to be like next year. So I don't know, how to expect going into next year. But right now, the challenge, I think, is, like I said, I've been tinkering with the strategies from the workshop. Here and there. Right now, the challenge is, with all the kids have been home, I co-teach with special education teachers. So I say we have been really trying to just do our best with the kids, because they're not required to be on all of our Google Meets that we have. We're required to have at least one every week. We've been offering 3 a day. Like, come on, let's meet and let's do our lessons and that. And so we've been trying to do live math lessons each morning. And then we've got a lot of kids that come to it and enjoy being there. I have tried a curiosity task just for fun one day. How many cases of cans of Pepsi are in all these cases? It was an array. But for the most part, it's been a lot of, and I don't feel good about it every time I do it, but it's been a lot of, here's we're going to multiply a couple decimals together. And I still, though, try, even though it's not what I would love it to be, I still try to, like I said before, what do you think about solving this problem? What can we estimate this first? And trying to use some of those estimating that you guys really emphasize in the workshop. And so it's not what I want it to be. Next week, my goal is hopefully to try to, get into more of the notice and wonder, starting out a unit on a certain skill, to try to get back to that since they'll be here. But it's always difficult not knowing, are we going to be back for 2 weeks and then back to remote? So, I mean, that's a current thing, just in general, but I think it also trickles over to just a normal school year too. If we're back full time next year, hopefully, I think that's one of the biggest challenges I have is trying to go from, you don't know where the kids have been in math. They've had a great teacher, no doubt, from where they've come from. I shouldn't say no doubt, but hopefully they've had a good teacher from where they come from. And then in 6th grade, because I teach 5th and 6th, I don't know where they're going in that case either. And what I mean by that is, the thing that's always been challenging for me is I have them for 1 year. And so trying to put like something, like next year, my goal is to try to really do more with the curiosity path, and more of that types of teaching. But then in the back of my mind, it's always second guessing myself, like, okay, next year, they're not going to have a teacher necessarily teaching in that way. And how do I make sure that I'm doing what I need to do to make sure that when they go there, they can be successful there? And then I go back and think, well, but maybe the way that I'm trying is going to actually help them even more, because they'll be, not afraid to make those mistakes, and they'll be looking at things differently. So I think that's really one of the biggest things I've always struggled with over these last few years is that balance, between.
Yeah. And, like in listening through this conversation and hearing some of the things that you've shared, it's like, when you look at the workshop, the online workshop is 6 modules. And we always find like that first module is kind of like that, we'll call it almost like your Joe Bowler moment. It's kind of what we do to try to get everyone in the workshop on the same page. We try to get everybody into this math mindset. We have them share their math moments. We talk about like, what do they want students to remember 5 years from now if you were to bump into them? And I don't say it in the workshop, but I'll say it here with you. But, it seems like always at the beer store here in Ontario, there's a beer store. We can't buy it at the grocery. Well, now we can actually. Now you That's can. New. Yeah, that is new. But it used to only be the beer store where you could purchase beer. And it would be like bump into old students there all the time. And I would ask them, what do you remember? And, early in this workshop, we're really working on that mindset, on trying to get teachers thinking differently about how to do that. You had that coming in. The part that I'm hearing that really had an impact or an influence on you is about how you can take your resources you have and transform them with the curiosity path. The part that I'm hearing, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put any words in your mouth here, But it sounds like when we get into module 5 and 6, we get into this idea of planning, the igniting your teacher moves. And what I'm wondering about, I'm sort of hearing something happening here. There's like this way that, is kind of stuck in your brain as the way you learned. It's the way you taught for many years. And now that we're up against this challenge, this online learning, this remote learning thing, it's so easy to fall back into this place. And I've had this discussion with many, many educators, both in my district and beyond. And you over here, you've got this idea of like, you want to use curious problems. And I'm wondering, and this is something that we do cover in, and we explore in module 5 and 6 when we get into planning, is I wonder if you were to maybe think about from just a slightly different perspective about right now you're feeling this tug from where students are going to go off to next year. You have no idea, or maybe you have a very good idea of whose class they'll end up in and how that will be, laid out. And it's sense this worry that, will they have what they need to survive in that, learning environment? And I wonder if you think about those things and start looking at planning your lesson, like when you were talking about decimals just a moment ago, you're like, all right, I just sort of had them work with these decimals. Maybe it was adding, multiplying, whatever. What if you were to still start there, but then you go back to that resource and you look in the resource and you try to find whatever problem is there that you can still add some curiosity to it. Whereas what I'm wondering, and this is very common, we have this discussion with a lot of math moment makers, where they kind of look for the curiosity first and try to figure out where it fits versus starting with the intentionality of the math. Like you're like, I want to do this, and that might bring me to my resource. And I look and I'm looking through and I'm trying to find any context out of that section of the textbook. And you're going, you know what, this one, I can tweak it just slightly to make it a little more curious, and we'll still be able to get to the math concept that we're after. Because if we go all the way back to your Joe Bowler experience, a lot of people will start that. A lot of people go to John's website and they just grab any task. They're like, I'm going to do a 3-act math task today. And they do it. Kids enjoy it. But at the end, it's like, I didn't really know what I was hoping to get out of this lesson. And that's common. It's not, anything to beat ourselves up over. But now it's like, how do we kind of flip that order a little bit and go, this is what I'm after. Let's not necessarily go and look for a specific task. Maybe there's one out there, but don't spend a ton of time doing that. Now you're looking and going, okay, how do I take what that traditional lesson may have looked like, and I just grab one problem that I can use as sort of like the bait. It's going to be the investigation we're going to use. And then I can start focusing in on the consolidation of my lesson, because that's where like the meat and potatoes of a problem-based lesson are going to be going on, right? Is like getting students to kind of make the connections that we were after. And again, really hard to do that if I wasn't sure why I picked the task in the first place. So I'm going to flip it back to you. I know that was a huge mouthful, but like, what are your thoughts on that? Are we on the right path when we talk about where that struggle is, or is there anything else that you want to articulate about that?
Yeah, I think that definitely plays a role in it. My mindset as far as choosing the problems, I think has changed since taking the workshop over the summer. And so I have been kind of what you were saying, is a good reminder about that. But that's kind of where I see myself going is, like I said, about that robot task. And even actually, as you were talking, since we are going to be back with the, half day next week, there was a problem in the book that was about multiplying 2 decimals together. That was, again, set up like a standard word problem with a little chart, 2 missing numbers in it, missing prices. And then in the problem, it gives them all the information, and then they have to figure out how to use it. So, my plan was to use that and just, again, give the picture of the chart with the missing numbers, and that's it. And let them think, what do you see? What are you wondering? And then, build from there. I've already taught the multiplication with the 2 decimals, like I said, with our remote learning. We're trying to make it as simplified as possible, just based on the way we're set up. But again, that's that pull that I have to, I come back next week and like, all right, we're gonna do this curiosity path, kind of like as a review to make sure that what they were doing at home, all right, we're gonna kind of go back and start this over a little bit for a couple of days, and it'll give me a good idea of who can maybe think of applying that. So again, not ideal. I'd rather start with that and then build from there. And that's what my plan is moving forward, like you were saying, is to take those, the resource, whatever it's from, with more, purpose in planning.
Gotcha.
So yeah, for sure. I would say, as I was going through the course, that module 5 was the part where there was some eye openers to me as far as, what I could do, as far as things like spiraling and going through, not trying to hit on different tasks or different concepts instead of just plowing through from, unit 1 to unit 500 or whatever. But that I kind of had to put on the back burner for this school year, just because I really needed to work tightly with my team.
Right.
And because we actually, one thing I forgot to mention is we're working together as a house. So all of our kids who are home, like totally home and not coming to school at all, each of us is putting out a subject for them, like lessons daily for them. And I'm doing math. So I'm kind of, sometimes my hands are tied because I'm putting out for them what I'm doing here. And so a curiosity path lesson isn't great when I don't really have a lot of contact with them outside of just my video and that. So plus here, the way we have it is, again, it'll change next week, but the kids don't always show up for the lessons. They aren't necessarily required to be there. So some kids are at the lessons, some kids are not. Some kids don't do it until 2 weeks later, unfortunately. Yeah. So those have been the challenges. But yes, what you said about the intentionality of choosing the tasks is something I'm really trying to work on moving forward, and trying to change those, scrolling through the math textbook, looking for a problem that might encourage that curiosity and that to kind of kick things off is what I'm hoping for moving forward. So yeah, I don't know if did I answer your question, but
yeah, I think you've set your own goal right now. Like you've articulated what you were struggling with. Kyle suggested thinking about what which is something that I think we definitely did when we kind of saw different tasks. We had those like sparkly eyes when we looked over at these tasks, and we're like,
this is gonna change it for us.
Fun. Let's do that. And then we forgot about like, well, what's the real focus here? And as we got more focused, we looked at what's going on in the middle of the lesson, right? That's the most important part. And it sounds like to look for that, to start thinking about that. And you have basically you're setting your own steps up for your next steps, like what to tackle next. So I'm wondering, like, when you set your own goals like this, what right now are you anticipating being tough moving forward with those things? And maybe we can share a little bit about that before we say give you a couple suggestions, because we've in the back, we want to suggest a couple tasks that we have, because the tasks on the Academy right now, we've been putting a lot of work into those, because the first thing you read on a task on the Academy is the intentionality on like, what is this task about? What are we hoping to pull from this? So we're going to go that way, but I'm just wondering, like, what do you see as a stumbling block on the path that you're setting for yourself, which is trying to be more focused with your lessons?
Yeah. So I think moving forward, getting my feet wet with the curiosity types of tasks, and I think is the first step that I've realized, okay, I can do this. Like it actually does work, because the tasks that we've done like that, which throughout the year have been scattered, are always the tasks that the kids are way more engaged and interested in. So I know that's something moving forward. Okay, need to do more of this. Like this needs to be in here. And one of the things is, I co-teach too with my special education teacher, and we really work well together. And I think she's willing to go on the journey as well, and she likes to learn new things, and which is awesome. And I think a lot of it, as far as like the stumbling blocks moving forward, for me, stems back to taking the task and then the notice, the wonder, the estimating, and then going into what's the question, and what more questions do you have, and then going into the group work. When I'm able to have the kids collaborate, will be great. It's to that point. The challenge for me is, whenever I've done like group work types of things, is ensuring that, in one group, when they're done with that task and when we've consolidated, like we're in that consolidation phase, what methods I can use, or in what ways can I make sure that all those students are taking away, what the intention of that lesson was in that consolidation phase. I think that's been something that's always been a challenge for me. And I think moving forward, like I said, notice and wonder, and that beginning part to get them into the task and working, I think is, I don't want to say the easier part, but it's the part where, they're already, having fun tackling a problem. But then the part to make sure that, okay, 2 days later or 3 days later or two months later, do you understand that skill, right, that concept, that taking that conceptual to the, more procedural. Now, I don't know how, I'm hoping I'm making sense, but that's
you totally are.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing as well, and I just shared my screen here. So anyone who's listening to the podcast, again, as we mentioned in the beginning, we did this over a Zoom call. So I've got the screen shared. We're going to probably put this up on YouTube. So if you're really curious, you can look at our Math Moments YouTube channel, to those who are listening, and check it out. But like, this is what John was talking about is our different problem-based units, which is something that we've been working on for quite some time now. And some are single day lessons, but mostly now we're working on full units. And, I heard you talking about decimals, like few things are firing in my mind here before we wrap things up. And just some things for you to think about is thinking about how the mathematics develops is so key. It's so important. I also heard you talking about, and I think this is part of the struggle of being online, is like feeling like you've got to almost teach and pre-teach before we dive into some of these tasks. So what we've done is we've tried to take these units and design them in a way where it guides you through. And in the teacher guide section, so you had mentioned decimals, and when decimals come to mind, I'm constantly thinking about fractions, because decimals are abstract representations. They're almost like very limiting fractions, right? Where you can only have denominators of 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. That's like what a decimal is. So making sure kids are really comfortable with fractions conceptually is really, really important. And, here's one example. This is the 6-day woolly worm race. It's a newer unit, so we've been talking about it a lot lately, but it's got the context there set, so the curiosity path is all set. But the part that I think might be really helpful for you in the journey, in the phase of the journey you're in right now, not only are these online and you could run them online in an online environment in the scenario you're in, but again, like John said, our intentionality is listed here. The Spark, it takes us all through that process, which again, sounds like you're getting the hang of that through the workshop. But the part that I'm really hearing about for you is the sense making piece. Like, what's the productive struggle going to be? And in this particular case, we give students the total distance in meters that these woolly worms, these caterpillars, travel in this race. And essentially, whoever goes the furthest wins. And we were trying to be strategic about this so that students would have to actually represent the fractions in order to determine who won the race. Now, the part that I think is really helpful for you is this anticipating piece and really setting you up for the consolidation. So not only do we tell you what to look for as you're monitoring and selecting and sequencing for students, but we also give you some possible student approaches. And when we call it an approach, we're really talking about the strategy and the model that students are using in order to solve. So we give you a student sample, we explain it, and usually use like the student's thinking, like how the student might share that with you. So what you might look for, here's a paper folding example, here's a number line example. These aren't the only things that might emerge, but what we're trying to do is help students see fractions on a linear model. So we start with kind of this bar model and work our way to the number line. And then finally, we give you the moves in your consolidation. So we actually give you your facilitator notes. We even give you some visuals, usually a couple-minute video to kind of unpack the big ideas for you. And I'm wondering, like, that to me is what's jumping out to me as maybe a place you might want to start exploring. So again, got to pick your intentionality first. You don't want to go and find the unit and decide that's what you're going to start teaching. But with these units, I think they would fit really nicely, especially when you're working in, like, if you're multiplying decimals, multiplying fractions is going to be really important, right? Dividing fractions is going to be really important. When you get in that land of working with multiplying and dividing decimals, you definitely want to go there. So the snack time unit would be a great one for you to check out. It's whole numbers, and we divide and reveal fractions as the quotient. So and that heads through a really interesting unit as well. So I just wanted to share that and give you a snapshot of that. We'll put these links into the show notes as well for those who are listening. But I'm wondering now, if we were to flip back to you, we're looking at the time now, and we're wondering, like, if you were to think back to everything we've discussed here, are there any big takeaways, and how are you feeling after this conversation in terms of where you might go next in your journey, knowing that, again, nothing is solved or fixed immediately, but just in terms of what's going through your mind now as you try to take that next move?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things as our discussion has gone on has been just the reiteration and review, kind of review for me, I think, of going back to that workshop and thinking about, like you said, with the intentionality of the task. And I think moving forward for me, one of the biggest things I know I can keep working on is just, I want to say not being afraid to keep going with it. If I know it's working, I'm seeing some good things, and to try not to fall back on that, that old approach that, we're all so used to, and so many others are. So I think really keeping going with, looking for something that is purposeful and meaningful to start that unit would be a key for me moving forward too, because I do know that in the past it was a lot of the ooh, look at this task, this is really fun and
sparkly.
Exactly, just like you guys said before, you hit it on the head with that, and but just I think with my over the last 5 years, just kind of a passion I've developed, again, not being a math major, but having more of a passion for teaching math in elementary school. I really think that I can use a lot of those resources from the workshop and that to help out. And I also think just I really wanted to try to, with my fellow colleagues here, I want to try to expose them to some of this too, and say, like, this is something we can do in addition to what we have, like, as resources. Like, we can use those resources and not just do the problems in the book. We could pull a problem from the book and turn it around, like you guys were saying, and start with something different, and just use it as a resource. So I think just you guys reaffirming that I might be on the right track with some things, and trying to grow from there, I think is just key. As the school year continues now, I want to try more and more to take those textbooks problems
Right.
and turn them around and yeah. So
yeah, and that's great, great stuff. And I'm sure that your path is going to continue, and you're going to continue to do great things. And from our discussion, we've been thinking, about some of the things that you've been mentioning about the topics that you've talked about, and being intentional with your tasks, but also we have another course that is called The Concept Holding Your Students Back, which is all about proportional reasoning, and it's like perfectly for your grade level, and it's great for helping developmentally thinking about the trajectory of these tasks, but also like how one concept flows into the other, and how proportional reasoning connects so many things together. So we would love for you to continue that learning, and we're going to send you access to that course after we're done here talking. So you'll have that
there, John.
You'll have that to kind of continue on with your learning, but also to help inform your staff and the teachers that you work with. So this has been a great conversation. We always love chatting with you and lots of folks from the Make Math Moments community. But thanks so much. We want to thank you so much, Jason, for joining us here on the podcast. And we're really hoping to kind of connect with you in like 6 to 9 months. Like we usually reach out and to kind of connect back up to see how things are going after this conversation, maybe after you've taken the next course to kind of further that learning. So looking forward to that, and hope you take care.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys and meeting with me.
No problem.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Thanks so much.
Keep it up. You're doing great stuff. We'll see you soon.
All right.
That would be the end.
Click.
Normally we would like stop the recording,
Okay.
but we're not going to do that here. So that'll be the end of the recording, and we just again want to thank you for joining us. It's lots of fun to chat, and look forward to connecting with you, and hopefully you have a great rest of your semester, trimester, and rest of the year. But I know that things are tough, and keep plugging away.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just have to say, if I may, this is my first time doing anything like this. So I hope I was not rambling on too much. So
Oh no, you did great, my friend.
yeah.
Oh, it's good.
So all right, guys.
People love hearing from people that are in the trenches doing the work,
Yeah.
and it's an honor getting a chance to talk with folks. So thanks a ton. You are in Eastern time zone like us, so it's getting late.
I'm in Central.
It's probably one more
Central.
hour over Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah, still getting late.
I'm in Central. I was worried that you guys, I didn't know quite what time it was where you guys are, but
It's almost done.
yeah. So this was a nice distraction, I have to say, from what's been going on in our country.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Don't get us started on that. It's crazy,
Oh,
But
all right.
we appreciate it, my friend. Listen, go enjoy the rest of the evening, wind down, and you're doing great stuff. And don't hesitate, stay in touch, and obviously in the community area as well. Let us know how things are going. We love hearing from people and seeing how people are implementing some strategies.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, take care, Jason. Have a good one.
Take care.
Yep. You too.